The Astartes are the defenders of the Imperium against enemies from the stars and from within, and they do so with a pragmatism that borders on the inhumane sometimes. And while there are chapters like the Lamenters or the Salamanders who actually care for human life, most only care for their work for their duty, and their devotion to the Emperor and the Imperium as a whole. But on the other side of the spectrum, there also exist certain chapters that have no care whatsoever for honor or even for glory or, for human life. To them, getting the job done is all that matters, and sometimes what they have to do or are in a compulsion to do is so brutal and evil that it borders on heresy. And so here we are with a list of 10 Space Marine chapters, loyalist ones, that are the most brutal and the most feared in the Imperium. Let's get to it. Of course, we begin with the Marines Malevolent. These are amongst the most feared and despised of the Emperor's loyal sons. Though technically loyalist, their devotion to the Imperium manifests in a form of ruthless pragmatism that borders on outright cruelty. They view compassion as weakness and mercy as heresy, believing that the survival of mankind can only be ensured through absolute pitiless war. Civilians are collateral at best, liabilities at worst, and to the Marines Malevolent, any who lack the will or strength to defend themselves deserve their fate. Their credo is that there are no innocents, only varying degrees of guilt, and this has led to countless massacres that even other chapters whisper of with disgust and resentment. So in short, to fight alongside them is to risk annihilation, not just from the enemy but from one's own supposed allies as well. So in battle, the Marines Malevolent embody the wrath of the Imperium made flesh, as they are efficient, unrelenting, and utterly remorseless. They make little distinction between soldier, civilian, or any ally once their fury is roused. Cities have been burned and entire regiments of the Astra Militarum have been reduced to ash simply because they stood in the way of one of their offensives. Their warriors, like Reynard for example, personify this philosophy. He is brutal, he is a prideful killer who sees honor as a delusion and restraint as a failure. And even amongst the Adeptus Astartes, these Marines Malevolent are seen as pariahs or as brothers in gene only and not in spirit. Yet for all their savagery, their record of victories cannot be denied. The Marines Malevolent are the Imperium's blunt instrument, too dangerous to love, but too effective to reject. Now the second one are the Carcharodons. The Carcharodons Astra or Space Sharks are the silent predators of the void. They are elusive and utterly terrifying even by Astartes standards. They are a chapter that embodies the cold, remorseless hunger of the abyss they inhabit. Where other Space Marines bring the Emperor's light to the stars, the Carcharodons bring only darkness as an extinction level calm before the storm, which is followed by sudden surgical annihilation. Their origins are lost to records, though whispers persist that they descend from the Raven God, and their gene seed twisted by isolation and the long predatory years spent far beyond the Imperium's borders. They adhere to the nomad predation doctrine, as they are never seen holding territory for long, striking from the void with primal savagery and vanishing back just as quickly, leaving only silence and corpses in their wake. Thus, encountering the Carcharodons is to see the Imperium's oldest and most brutal instincts, which is that of sheer survival and utter dominance. These warriors are stoic killers, their discipline masking the feral violence that lies beneath their facade. They strike like deep-sea hunters, swift and unstoppable. Their grey armor and shark-toothed markings heralds death from the stars. They do not simply wage war, they cull, they purge entire populations deemed unworthy or even tainted. Even their human serfs like Tryon and Cordy live in a constant state of reverence and fear, as they are but slaves who find purpose only in serving their master's war rights. As such, the Carcharodons are not crusaders nor conquerors, because in the grimdark of the current era Indomitus, they are the abyss that is made manifest. They are the dark between the stars that is given teeth to kill. Now number 3, the Executioners. This chapter are the brutal heirs of Rogaldon's wrath, descended from the stoic imperial fist, yet stripped of their restraint and tempered discipline. Founded in the blood-soaked years after the Horus Heresy under the leadership of Fafnir Ran, they were created to hunt down and exterminate the enemies of mankind. Over the millennia, isolation, constant warfare, and their own warrior ethos have shaped them into something more primal, almost barbaric. Their culture is now steeped in ancestor worship and animistic ritual predating the ecclesiarchy itself. They believe that every warrior must carve his own saga into the chapter's living memory, seeking the favor of the dead speakers who record and judge the deeds of the fallen. To prove their worth, the Executioners take trophies like skulls, weapons, and body parts of their enemies, presenting them after battle as tokens of their victories and devotion. They are head-hunting berserkers which are cloaked in iconographies of death, their armor often adorned with talismans of bone and carved runes of remembrance. They scorn the regimented doctrines of chapters like the Ultramarines, seeing such rigidity as weakness, and hold themselves as the Emperor's sanctioned headsmen or executioners in the truest, most literal sense. Number 4. The Minotaurs. These are amongst the most ruthlessly efficient and terrifyingly brutal of all Loyalist Space Marine chapters. They work seemingly as living weapons unleashed by the High Lords of Terror. Their brutality is not born of savagery nor bloodlust alone, but of cold, sanctioned purpose. When the Minotaurs go to war, they do so with the full authority of Terra's Shadowed Halls and the High Lords, and they persecute their enemies, whether Xenos, heretic or fellow Astartes, with merciless precision and systemic cruelty. In combat, the Minotaurs exemplify the Emperor's wrath stripped of humanity. They fight like siege breakers and executioners combined, their tactics built on overwhelming force and unrelenting close-quarter slaughter. During the Battle War, they became infamous for their boarding actions. These were brutal, methodical purges where corridors ran waist-deep with blood. Their 17-hour massacre of the Lamentus was a testament to their efforts, a victory so total it bordered on genocide, achieving a terrible cause but with absolute obedience to their orders. They have turned on fellow Space Marines as well without hesitation, like annihilating the Inceptor's chapters, seizing their relics and flagship as spoils of war, and even dared to insult the Ultramarines' primacy openly, as well as fighting the Custodes and Sisters of Silence during the Hexarchy crisis on Terra. They view mercy as weakness, pity as treason, and honor as a luxury for lesser warriors. Now, number 5, we have the Flesh Tearers. These are feared across the Imperium not merely for their ferocity in battle, but for the utter absence of restraint that defines them. Descended from the noble Blood Angels, they bear the same cursed gene seed, and in them the flaws are festered into monstrous extremes. The Red Thirst and Black Rage consume the Flesh Tearers at a terrifying rate, stripping away reason and replacing it with uncontrollable lust for slaughter. In battle, they are less like Astartes and more like murderous predators, driven by instinct and rage rather than discipline or strategy. Once the Flesh Tearers descend upon their enemies, their fury becomes indiscriminate. Friend and foe are torn apart alike in their berserker bloodlust. The aftermath of their campaigns often leave not just enemy corpses but entire civilian populations butchered, towns razed, and allies maimed or missing. Their chapter world, Cretaceous, mirrors their nature perfectly, a death world of fanged beasts and endless bloodletting, where only the strong and savage survive. Over the millennia, their numbers have dwindled, their minds frayed, and their reputation blackened, yet they still continue to fight because it's all they know. And this brings us to the Death Spectres. These are the Black Angels of the Ghoul Stars. They are warriors who see death not as a tragedy but as a divine truth, and they enforce that truth with fire and bolter. While other chapters fight to defend humanity, the Death Spectres fight to preserve only the Imperium's borders, not the lives within them. To them, a billion human deaths mean nothing if it keeps the horrors of the Ghoul Stars at bay, contained for one more century. These Death Spectres don't see humans or the human worlds as communities to defend, but only as reservoirs of flesh, breeding grounds to supply new aspirants for their chapter. Those deemed strong enough to survive their trials are taken, the rest are left to die. There are documented instances where the Death Spectres cull entire populations, leaving only a handful of children alive to be raised as future recruits. To them, this is not cruelty, it is efficiency. And to people there, they fear the Death Spectres as much as they fear the Xenos and the heretics. Now, number 7, the Knights of Blood. These are a tragic reflection of the Blood Angels' noble lineage. They are warriors who surrendered to the Red Thirst, not in weakness, but in desperate defiance of extinction. When their gene seed curse worsened beyond control, they turned to the blood of the innocent to survive, drinking deep of humanity's blood itself to stave off the Black Rage and the Red Thirst. This act of damnation transformed them into predatory horrors, their once beautiful forms twisted into red-skinned, yellow-eyed fanged fiends that resemble the cursed wretches which are imprisoned in Baal's Tower of Amarillo. On the battlefield, the Knights of Blood are berserker angels of death, their frenzied assaults leaving no distinction between enemies and allies. They descend in roaring storms of fire and of gore, tearing through foes with maddened fury and rending even their own brothers if the thirst takes them. Entire regiments of the Astra Militarum have vanished in the wake of their salvations, their bodies drained and broken amidst the corpses of heretics. They were for a time banned from the Sanguinary Brotherhood, but they were welcome only during the devastation of Baal. a gruesome battle for the homeworld of Sanguinius and the Blood Angels, where the last of them perished and their chapter finally declared lost. Number 8. The Red Talons. This is a chapter forged in hatred, sustained by vengeance, and defined by their utter contempt for weakness in all forms, especially flesh. And you know what that means? These are a successor chapter of the Iron Hands. To the Red Talons, mercy is heresy and forgiveness is a disease of the weak. Their brutality is legendary even amongst other Iron Hands descendants. Where others show restraint or tactical pragmatism, the Red Talons simply eradicate. Civilian worlds tainted by heresy or sympathy for traitors are purged with the same machine-like indifference they serve for chaos warbands. Cities are reduced to ash, populations to data points erased from the ledger of corruption. They view human suffering as a necessary expenditure in their grand calculus of vengeance. On the battlefield, the Red Talons fight like living engines of extermination. Their augmented bodies are cold and unfeeling. Their tactics precise to the point of sadism. They advance through fire and ruin, their machine-enhanced limbs tearing through flesh and ceramite alike. And amongst their ranks, there is no concept of brotherhood, only instruments of the omniscience wrath. Each warrior is a weapon which is honed by hate, convinced that the galaxy can only be purified through destruction. Now on the other side of the spectrum we have the Angels Vermilion, which is a chapter steeped in blood, secrecy and self-inflicted damnation. What makes them truly brutal is not their skill at battle, which they are really skilled in, but their monstrous ritual that sustains them, the sorrowing. Every 50 years or so, and sometimes often under Chapter Master Kudok Moore's reign, the Angels Vermilion conduct this unspeakable rite, the mass sacrifice and draining of entire populations. From Imperial citizens to battlefield survivors, their blood is harvested to feed the chapter's unending thirst. They bathe in this crimson flood, absorbing it through their armor's nutrient dispensers, and even spill the blood of one of their own sanguinary priests to complete the rite, which is kinda like a blasphemy that they endure as a necessary torment to stave off the red thirst and the black rage. And you know what that means? They are a successor chapter of the Blood Angels. When they descend upon a world, they do so as somber predators. Their strikes are clinical, efficient and drenched in ritualistic cruelty. And when they are done with the enemies of the Imperium, sadly the ones they save often fall to their bloodlust as well. To the Imperium at large, the Angels Vermilion are still technically loyal, yet behind every triumph lies a river of Imperial blood, which is spilled in secret. And here we end with the Grey Knights. To encounter a Grey Knight is to stand at the precipice of damnation, not because the warrior would strike you down for heresy, but because of your knowledge of his existence, which sadly is a crime against the Imperium's greatest secret. See, the Grey Knights are the Emperor's last and purest sons, warriors born of psychic might and genecraft, trained to battle the warp's darkest horrors. Yet the Inquisition, specifically the Order Malleus, enforces an iron law. No mortal may know of their existence and live. This secrecy is born not of arrogance, but of dire necessity. To know of the Grey Knight's existence is to know of chaos's reality, that demons walk among men, and that even the Imperium's strongest warriors must wield psychic power. Entire regiments of the Imperial Guard who fought alongside them, men and women who witnessed the silver-armored angels of death banish warp-born horrors, are systematically cleansed. The lucky ones are mind-wiped of their memories. The unlucky ones, however, are executed, sterilized or condemned to slow death in labor camps on distant forgotten worlds and turned to servitors. If entire cities or populations witness the demonic manifestations and the subsequent psychic warfare of the Grey Knights, they are subjected to exterminatus, annihilated from orbit by virus bombs or cyclonic torpedoes. The Third War for Armageddon remains one of the most infamous examples, which led to the Months of Shame and of the war with the Space Wolves due to the Inquisition eradicating a large section of the people from Armageddon for their witnessing of chaos and the Grey Knights. So in short, even though the Grey Knights are not brutal by their nature, the need for their secrecy has led to the culling of civilian populations, extermination of Space Marine chapters, and even war with the first founding chapter. And so with that we come to the end of it. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the 10 most brutal loyalist Space Marine chapters. Do hit that like button for support, and also for the ones holding their phones in their hands, you know the drill by now. Press the hype option to push this content further. Also subscribe to be a part of Legion Notebook. Till the next time, take care, boys.